So I want to tell you a story about a first round draft pick, Eric Stokes. This is a guy who grew up in East Atlanta in Covington and just got drafted in the first round by the Green Bay Packers. Now, everybody saw that. What they didn't see was, that Eric Stokes was a three-star guy coming out of a program, East Side, that nobody thought about, has thought about since. Nothing. He was blessed with some tremendous speed, and that's helped him along the way. But um, he was a guy that was developed by Georgia in his time in Athens, and I just don't think there's any question about that. And that's really the key focus here. I remember the most part about Eric Stokes was him sort of coming alive in 2018 at Missouri. He started having a really good game, and from that point forward, he was really in the lineup all the time for Georgia. But the key point here to make is that there are at least four DBs in every single college football program. They're not all corners like Eric, but there's at least four DBs. Most teams rotate five guys, and they can all be on the field at the same time. You saw Mark Webb get taken late by someone in the draft. Mark Webb's a good example, but there's so much competition at these defensive back positions that for a guy who came out, and honestly, he really was very unheralded coming out of East Side in Covington, that for him to come as long as he did and turn into a first round draft pick, that's guaranteed money 5 years down the line. You could be franchise. You could be with the Green. He could be with the Green Bay Packers for 6 years if things or beyond if things go the quote right way. Eric Stokes is proof that what's happening at Georgia is not exclusively about five-star guys. They broke a school record with this draft, but Eric Stokes is the one to concentrate on for a couple of reasons. First of all, people weren't really after Eric Stokes, and he was a guy that pulled the trigger very late in the process. And secondly, you know, Patrick Surtain Jr., I think, Eric Stokes, and there could be another couple guys that were DBs, true corners, that went in the first round. When you think about a guy who was not a can't miss prospect, who definitely developed at Georgia, I think it goes to the development that Kirby and company have had on these guys the entire time. The other thing to remember here is that Eric had multiple DB coaches. Mel Tucker, Charlton Warren just left to go be a head coach. A defensive coordinator. So this is a program that is developing guys for sure. If you don't think they are, what's the explanation for Eric Stokes? That was luck. I mean, there's no such thing as luck in sports. It doesn't happen. You have to create positive momentum. People associate that with being luck, but it's really not. And so when you think about guys like, JT Daniels just pops in my head as a guy who could go, in theory, next year in the first round, perhaps George Pickens, but certainly another three-star guy in Jordan. I mean, you start talking about Jordan Davis, that's the guy that probably has the most high upside in next year's draft, specifically next year's draft when you look at Georgia's board. But that's a guy that didn't come in as a five-star. I watched him play in high school against Zamir. Zamir was a five-star guy and played like it that night. Jordan Davis was playing offensive tackle. I mean, I've got photos from him playing Mallard Creek. So there's always criticisms to be had of head coaches. But the one that's overdone with Kirby and them is they get a bunch of talent and they don't do anything with it. Is that really true? I mean, or are you just trying to say they haven't won the national championship yet? Because those are not the same thing. Kentucky had 5 guys drafted. Did they play like that this year? Probably not. Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Notre Dame were the top 4. Well, 3 of those 4 teams that had the most drafted guys had the best recruiting classes lately. It's really not, rocket surgery. It is get the best players possible, develop them, and send them on their way to the NFL. That is the whole thing here. People never did like John Calipari. That the Kentucky fans I think understand it, but other folks don't when he says, "Hey, the number one thing is getting these guys to the NBA." Look, y'all. I mean, start living in reality. That's the bulk of what this is, and the winning is really up to the coaches at that moment. But the development is to get these guys to the league. Now, if Kirby wants to correct me, he can. And I'm not putting getting over the league bigger than winning. But Eric Stokes is the story of the draft for Georgia this year. And the fact that they had so many guys drafted. Mark Webb. I loved Monty Rice coming out of high school. He was not a highly touted guy either. He was like a low 4-star guy. And he was a top 100 NFL draft pick. I mean, if you're top 100, you're really you can really play. And it didn't shock me at all that Monty went that high because he's a guy that made play after play after play. It didn't matter. And so the note, and I think too at Alabama, you're seeing they do a great job of recruiting, identifying, recruiting, and developing talent. But Georgia, Bama, and Ohio State are the three teams that have done the best job over these last 5 years, which means the next 5 years, certainly 3 to 5 years, should be those three teams fighting it out for the national championship. That's what I expect, and we'll just see how it goes as it develops. But Eric is a great example of how identification of talent, recruiting, signing, development of that talent, and getting them out the door to the NFL. I mean, that's the ball game. That's what it is. If you do those things, you will win. If you do not do those things, you will be Georgia Tech. You will not have guys drafted. You will be Tennessee's. You will have one guy drafted. You will just fall off the face of the college football world. And, Georgia, when it wins the national championship under Kirby Smart, and it better, because he's got the guys. There's no question about that. This is now just navigating, winning the right game, which he's not yet done. When that happens, you'll hear this discussion of, he does less with more. I mean, I say there's plenty of stuff to criticize Kirby about. There is, and some of that criticism is legitimate. But didn't Trevor Lawrence walk on water? And they won one national championship with him after we heard about it for the whole summer that this guy was going to lead and go 45-0 in 3 straight national championships. I mean, people just don't live in reality. Who I would say did less with more was Texas the last decade, or Michigan the last decade. I mean, they signed great classes and doing nothing. USC. There's a whole host of them. The argument is really not that Georgia's not doing great with its talent. I mean, I think it's lost 4 total games in the last 2 years. So that's not really disappointing results. They just haven't won the national championship. But if you keep signing guys like Eric Stokes, developing them, and getting them out the door to the NFL, it's DBs are going to notice that you had 2 guys in the top 50 or top 33 picks. I can't remember now where Tyson was taken, but I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And that's the entire point of the draft, is to see who is getting guys out the door the right way. Mac Jones is a great example of development, you got to give credit where it's due. I think Georgia and Alabama are always talked about in terms of, well, they've got all these 5-star guys. Well, Mac Jones wasn't, and neither was Eric Stokes. And Eric Stokes is a great Monty Rice, Eric Stokes, and you'll see Jordan Davis next year. These are great examples of, hey, you got to develop guys along the way. It's stuff that coaches say behind the scenes, and they like to kind of throw it in the media's face sometimes, which is silly, but the identification of talent development and getting them out the door is that is the thing you got to do as a program. If you're not doing that, you're not going to be winning. Check out the website, dogpost.com. We'll see you over on the website. Thanks for watching.